Hello and welcome back. We already talked a little bit about how Docker works, what is a container, what is an image, and now that we have a basic understanding of this, we're going to get our hands dirty and we're going to start playing around with Docker in the terminal. So in these videos, we're gonna cover the installation for Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, Fedora. So based on your distribution, you can just follow the steps for that distribution. But in these videos, I will be showing you how to install Docker in each of those distributions. So if you have your laptop with Ubuntu or CentOS, go ahead, or you can always create a virtual machine in VirtualBox or in VMware or whatever you want, and you can install Docker there to test it. So here I'm gonna create the machine in AWS, which is pretty easy. So I will just launch an instance and let's try to do it in an Ubuntu machine. But before doing anything, I want to show you something. So let's go for Docker for Ubuntu in this case because I want to install it in Ubuntu. So we're gonna go to the first link and I want to show you that Docker is only available for certain distributions, for certain versions. So for Ubuntu, you have here the requirements. You need at least Ubuntu Senial, otherwise probably it's gonna complain. So let's go ahead and look in AWS what we have. So let's look for Ubuntu. Okay, let's take a look at this one, which is the 18. And okay, we have this number here, 18. So we're gonna pick up this version of Ubuntu to install Docker. So we're gonna pick up this image. We're gonna select it here. So I'm just gonna do it fast because it's simple to launch a machine here. I will basically do next, 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 next. So I will say next. I will give it an IP and then next, next, next. I will pick up an existing security groups, which is going to be this default, and I will review and launch, and I will use this key pair and launch instance. So basically what I'm doing here is just creating a virtual machine using Ubuntu. You can use your own laptop if you have Ubuntu, or you can create a virtual machine. So let's go to this instance and let's wait until this is ready or successful or started. So I will pause the video and I will come back in 1 minute. Okay, so that was pretty fast. Now we're gonna take this IP. Where is the IP address? Here I have the IP, and I'm gonna connect to this IP using SSH. So I will use my terminal to connect to this machine, and I will do SSH-I, and I will use this key. The user is Ubuntu, I think. Hopefully it's Ubuntu. And we're gonna paste this IP address. And now I can log into this machine, and as you can see, now I am inside of this machine, which is an Ubuntu machine. So let's look for LSB release, I think. And you can see that this is Bionic. And we have the version, and we have here the number, the release number 18, which is covered by Docker. So we have this requirement covered, which is great. Okay, so now that we have the machine created, remember that you can create it using VirtualBox, VMware, or your own laptop, it's okay. Now what we're gonna do is that we're going to install Docker. So if we say Docker PS, we have nothing here because this is a complete new machine. So let's go to the documentation and let's go here, let's read a little bit, and it says, okay, please update the packages first. So great, we're just gonna copy and paste this. We're gonna update the packages of this machine. Cool. Now let's keep reading, and we need to install these dependencies, these packages. So let's copy and paste this thing here. Let's put here -y, which will be accepting everything by default. And cool, the packages were already installed, so now let's keep reading. Now we need to add a GPG key, so let's copy this, copy and paste, and cool. Now what we need to do, okay, we need to add this repository, so let's copy this and let's paste that here because we're adding a new repository here. Great, it was added. and then we're gonna update the packages again because we added a new repository and we need to update the packages and the repositories for this repo to be enabled. So let's paste this here. Okay, this is not the command. Let's update the packages again, and great. So finally, we're going to install Docker with this line. So let's copy this and let's paste this. So let's hit enter. And as you can see, it's actually installing Docker from that repository that we selected and that we installed previously. And cool, now you have Docker installed. So let's keep scrolling down here. And now we're gonna test the installation by running this command. So let's copy this command, let's paste this here, and let's run it. And as you can see, it says hello from Docker, which means that this installation was successfully done. So that's great. Now we need to do a couple of things here that are not in the documentation, but that I will tell you. So the first thing is that if you type docker ps, then you are going to see an error here. That's why we used sudo here. Now, how do we fix this error? Permission denied. Well, that's super simple. What we need to do is to add the current user, which in this case is the Ubuntu user. We need to add this user to a group that was created by Docker, which is called Docker. So basically we do something like sudo user mode dash append to the group the user Ubuntu to the group Docker, or I think it's the opposite. It's Docker and then Ubuntu. Yes. So we're saying please please append to the Docker group the user Ubuntu. And now we hit enter, and what happens here is that now the Ubuntu user is added to this Docker group. So let's type groups here. But now that the user is added, we're gonna exit. So let's exit out of here, and now let's connect back. Let's SSH back into the instance in order to refresh all of the environment variables. And now if we type docker ps, you have this nice output. And if we type groups, then you can see that the Docker group is now added to this user, which means that the user Ubuntu belongs to the Docker group, which allows the user to run Docker commands. So that's great. Now the second thing that we're gonna do is that we're gonna enable the service at boot. So we're gonna do sudo systemctl enable docker. And what this is going to do is that whenever you reboot your virtual machine, then Docker will start whenever your machine starts. If your machine gets shut down and then you start it, then Docker is going to be started with the system. So basically, this is what this line does. In this video, you learned how to install Docker following the documentation. You learned how to fix the permission denied error by adding the user Ubuntu to the Docker group. And you learned how to enable the Docker service to start with your machine whenever it reboots. So I'll see you in the next lesson.